we're familiar with the whole like soccer mom thing in California. They definitely are using this as a means of dealing with parenting.
It's
right?
Mommy's little helper. So I bet you that Mick Jagger is going to be writing a whole new song.
The green rush is real. From lawmakers and investment bankers to CEOs and investors, we'll look at how people are transforming cannabis from the shadows of the black market into a cash crop that draws in cannapreneurs from Hollywood to Wall Street. Here to help you navigate the business of cannabis, please welcome Louis Goldberg and Ann Donahoe. Brought to you by KCSA Strategic Communications.
Hi, I'm Louis Goldberg with the Green Rush Podcast. Normally I'm recording with my colleague, cohort, and good friend Ann Donahoe, but she can't join us today. And I will be talking with Aaron Smith, the lead cannabis reporter for CNN, or fake news between you and me. If after this interview you can do us a favor and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to it, that would be awesome. And as always, make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter with the handle @GreenRushComms. Or you can visit us on www.kcsa-cannabis.com. It really helps us out. So you get to do something that I bet you never imagined in a million years, which is you are the cannabis reporter for CNN.
Yes, that is correct.
Did you pitch them on the beat, or did they pitch you?
It was kind of a combination of both. I also cover the gun industry, and I really did make that beat happen. But the marijuana was something I think they were interested in, but they weren't really sure how to pursue it. And they had other people covering it before me, but I really pushed them on it and really wanted to do it.
So
they eventually came around to the idea.
You lit them up on it?
Yeah, I did.
Nice.
I basically, I think I convinced them that it was an important beat. I think what really did it was, the states just kept legalizing it. And then, of course, in November last year, we had 5 of them do it in one day.
Yeah.
But I think, but even before that, they could really see where it was going.
Well,
and I think when
Dr. Gupta, when Sanjay did his weed series, I mean, I think that was the fundamental. That was the turning point, not only for CNN, it was a turning point for the country. It changed many people's perception. Has your perception, as you've covered the industry, changed? And how?
I think my perception of it, we really look at the money. We were very focused on that. Mm-hmm. And I guess my perception changing has been a gradually dawning realization of just how big a deal it is financially. Because now we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry for tens of billions of dollars in taxable annual revenue for all of these different states that are, willing to basically move forward with it.
And this has got to be the reason why the industry shouldn't be afraid of Sessions or Trump, right? I mean, there's no way that Colorado or Florida or Georgia or any of the states that are making so much money are ever going to allow that to get rolled back.
Well, that's a good point. I think that people who are in the industry are aware of the fact that there are inherent risks, legal risks, the kind of risks that you're not necessarily going to find in a lot of other industries. So we have this conversation a lot. What is Sessions going to do? Trump doesn't really actually seem to care about legalization that much. If you think about it, Sessions is the one who has been making the most noise about it, but he hasn't really done anything about it. If he was going to do something about it, I think he could do like some token raids of dispensaries in Colorado and California.
Did you say toking raids?
Toking, that was good. Yes, toking raids, and to make a point and to basically freak people out. But and maybe that would have some effect, and maybe it wouldn't. But in terms of a more nationwide crackdown, you really have to ask. I mean, is that possible financially? We're doing a story about CBD, which is, part of this industry. I was talking to DEA about it. There's companies like Medical Marijuana Inc. that actually sell CBD online. And the DEA says, well, that's illegal. And then you go back to those companies and they'll say, no, it's not illegal and we're lawyered up and ready to go.
Yeah, CBD, they ship CBD across state lines all the time. THC is a lot more difficult.
Yes. But what the DEA told me was, and you'll see this in a story we're working on, or, when we publish it, the DEA said it's illegal, but we're not going to do anything about it. And that's coming from a DEA spokesman. He says we're in the middle of an opioid crisis. So we're not going to mess around with taking CBD away from, a mom who's giving it to her kid who has epilepsy. That was the example he used. So, you put that within the context of your question, about Jeff Sessions. He would like it to go away, but what can he really do? And
are you getting pitched by the DEA, or are you getting pitched by the Justice Department on stories from their perspective, or are they trying to influence your coverage in any way?
No, not at all. They do not. I always reach out to them. They're not the ones that are reaching out to me. And when I call them and ask them questions about it, I don't feel that they're trying to manipulate me in any way. They just reiterate that it is illegal. They don't want anyone to misinterpret anything that they would say otherwise. You know what I'm saying? It's illegal. Schedule I drug like heroin. And that's basically the point that they would make. But like I said, the guy did say, we're not going to do anything about CBD because it's not a priority.
So you have a really interesting beat between guns and cannabis.
Yes, it is.
Do the other reporters in the newsroom kind of lust after what you're covering, or do they look at you and go, "Oh, he's got that stuff"?
I think that they might be amused by it. I don't know if they necessarily desire. I mean, sometimes people will help me out. We all have our different beats,
right?
But I'm not sure that anyone's really coveting the beat that I cover. I mean, the gun knowledge is something that I sort of developed over quite a few years. And with that, and with the marijuana beat, it's important to be objective. Certainly with the guns, everyone has an opinion about it. To me, my opinion is not so important. It's getting the information out there, because there have been problems in coverage with inaccuracy and things like that. I think the best thing to do is just, to tell the story the way it is. And I think with the marijuana beat, that's very important too. The legality of it can actually be very complicated.
So do you see a difference in the way you cover guns and cannabis, or do you just treat them both? So there is a difference in what makes for a compelling cannabis story for you?
Well, what I think is really compelling about it from a business standpoint is how the businesses handle the finances of it. Now, in these wildfires we have in California,
right, you wrote a piece on that.
Yeah, we've done a couple stories on that, and we've had dozens of farms, burned to the ground in California, marijuana farms.
Right.
The been a major problem with that is that the farmers are uninsured and
uninsurable, right? And you can't get insurance.
Uninsurable. Yes. Now you might Google cannabis insurance and see like 80 companies listed there, but I've been told that these are not necessarily trustworthy companies. I'm not going to name names because I have not yet reached out to these companies.
Right.
That's a story I'll be doing in a few days, and I want to try and figure out how this works, because some people tell you, oh no, you can insure marijuana. I really don't think that there is a reliable way to do it. Now, part of the permitting system in California is supposed to fix that problem. I don't know how they intend to do that because, as you know, cannabis is illegal according to the federal government. So once you get into the finances of it, and that would include insurance, I just don't know how you would do it unless, the Trump administration would try to make some special exception for it.
Yeah, but insurance is regulated at the state level. It is not. It's not like Bermuda where there's one regulator. I mean, all 50 states have their own insurance regulators, and each insurer has to have its own license in each state that they provide insurance. This actually might be a way to get around. The biggest issue in cannabis right now is banking and the cross-border transfer of cash. So this actually might be a way to back into a legitimate financial services solution.
It could be, although it could get complicated very fast, because even with like a state registered insurance company, you're going to be dealing with banking and finance, and you're going to be dealing with federal law as it applies to finance. I'm not people would really get around that. So unless the federal government actually does change the scheduling or do some other legal change for the cannabis industry, they are always going to be dealing with it, I think. It's like the biggest thing hanging over that industry.
So this industry is in early days, right? I mean, I make the analogy that this is like tech in 1996 or 97, and that one of these companies is going to be Amazon, one of these companies is going to be Google. How, in your coverage, seeing some of these companies doing things to prepare not for 6 months and not for 6 years, but for 10 years or 15 years down the line, and how does that influence your coverage?
Yeah. I'm always looking at the companies that are willing to invest some money, that have a plan, because you remember in the 90s, a lot of those dot-coms didn't really have a plan.
Right.
There was this thing called money, and you're supposed to make it, and some of them didn't quite get that. So I feel like I'm looking with the marijuana companies, like, how are they going to make money? Because the investment is, huge, of putting millions of dollars into it. And how are they dealing with the legal realities of what they're doing? And a lot of them, like Medical Marijuana Inc. was the example I brought up earlier.
Right.
They've gotten lawyered up, and they've really looked at the issue, and they seem to be preparing for a fight. We'll see what happens with that. Basically, I look at how companies, how seriously do they take this, the whole legal issue? Are they getting ready for sessions to come after them? And are they preparing to fight that fight? I mean, if they are, I would think that maybe they'll be around for a while. I mean, it really kind of depends. But I want to say something. There are a lot of really interesting ideas that have come out.
Hold on.
Some people are looking.
I want you to hold this for 1 second, because we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll continue this conversation with Aaron Smith from CNN.
More Green Rush coming up after we roll through our sponsors.
Introducing 420 Cloud, ignited by MSIG, one of the fastest growing social apps around. The only app you'll need for all things cannabis. Find the latest cannabis news, videos, and stories, ranging from business and tech to sports and medicine. Start your career in cannabis by seeking, identifying, and applying for jobs through our expansive listings. For businesses, 420cloud.com features a full-scale cross-channel network, monetizing high traffic for big data conversion and analytics. Download 420 Cloud now from the iTunes Store or Google Play. MSIG.com is a publicly listed company on the OTC, symbol MCIG.
Strainwise Consulting is the most sought-after consulting company for cannabis business applications and management contracts. We consulted on the first recreational license in the world and have had an over 95% success rate on applications submitted. The industry is growing at such an exponential rate that building a powerful and lasting cannabis business is a #1 priority. Here's Strainwise's Sean Eubanks.
In our first 5 years, we branded and supported 9 medical and recreational marijuana dispensaries and approximately 160,000 square feet of sophisticated and efficient product cultivation.
Strainwise Consulting has the experience and expertise to guide you through the process.
Banking and Bud, understanding the business of cannabis. Welcome back to The Green Rush, only on CannabisRadio.com.
And we're back with Aaron Smith, the cannabis reporter, gun reporter, and brilliant reporter extraordinaire from CNN. So you were about to tell me something that's absolutely going to be mind-blowing, not only for me, but for all of our listeners. So opine away, my friend.
Oh, well, here we are. I run across a lot of really interesting ideas for companies that people have, these different entrepreneurs. I call them the pot, pick, and shovel companies. These are companies that do not directly handle the marijuana. Right. So you have this company, I think they're in Massachusetts, which, of course, has now legal recreational marijuana, and they're going to open up a retail market next year. And there's a company called Bloom Boss, and they make products that help you grow. Well, they don't call it marijuana. That helps you grow whatever you want to at home. And I thought that it was really, really kind of interesting because, let's say you live in a state that just legalized recreational marijuana, but you can't buy it or sell it. You're in a place like Washington, D.C.
Right.
This company is basically tailoring its product for someone that doesn't really know much about growing, but they want to grow things at home.
But this is just it's like a hydroponic store, right? It's like that company that sells the upside down tomato plant.
Except they have like this box that looks like a refrigerator that costs $2,500, and they're coming up with this thing. And I haven't seen one up close,
right?
But they're basically pitching it as this very user-friendly product. And I think it's kind of interesting that is, the product that they've come up with. And there's another company, I think it's called Hemp Jobs or Hemp Staff. I think it's Hemp Jobs, where
it's a staffing company.
Yes. They're like a marijuana job matchmaker. Like if you want to work in the marijuana industry or you want to hire people, you're a dispensary in California or whatever, they'll basically set you up. And what's interesting about that is not all the people working in this industry are bud tenders or bud trimmers. You've got botanists and pharmacologists and people with really
chefs.
advanced.
We represent a company that called Golden Leaf, which is vertically integrated, and they make their own candies. And these companies are taking people right out of cooking schools, candy makers, and stealing them from Hershey's and teaching them to infuse THC and how to work with terpenes and the like. So it's really cool. When you talk about picks and shovels, there's other companies. The only company that's listed on the New York Stock Exchange right now is a REIT, and they don't touch the plant. They just build out the facilities. So you and I are both parents, and I've talked with my kids about my participation in the industry. Have you had to talk to your children about that you cover cannabis, and how do you do that conversation? How do you have that?
No, well, they're very little. My son's 4.5, and my daughter's 2.5. Though they do hear me talking to people about it.
Right.
And, I haven't had any kind of serious, like they're not here now, but, they've been around me when I've talked, like had a conversation like I'm having with you right now.
Have you and your wife had
to
talk about parenting around this issue? Because it's something that I've had to deal with, and I know a lot of other people in the space have to deal with this. Yeah,
I actually have not talked with people about that specifically. I mean, of course, a lot of people were concerned about edibles and edibles lying around and kids eating them. I haven't heard anything about that lately, so I think people kind of learned, to put that stuff away, hopefully. Right. And of course, we're familiar with the whole like soccer mom thing in California. They definitely are using this as a means of dealing with parenting. It's right?
Mommy's little helper. So I bet you that Mick Jagger is going to be writing a whole new song.
I'm sure he is. It used to be wine and still is.
Yeah, wine and Valium, and now it's edibles and tinctures.
So there is that. But I haven't, and I do wonder about this, like when my kids get older, is it going to be legal in New York? And my first reaction is, of course. And a lot of people will look at the nationwide legality of marijuana as a sort of inevitable thing, in that our kids will all, it'll be a different world for them. And it already is for a lot of younger people out west. They can actually walk into a store and buy it, which is something we could never even really imagine, or at least not when I was younger.
No way.
But here's one thing, though. A lot of people who I talk to, they regard the nationwide legality of marijuana as a sort of inevitable thing. And I can certainly see how they would think that when you look at, the popularity behind it and the fact that it doesn't really seem that controversial.
It's the money. I don't think it has anything to do with popularity. I don't think cannabis is any more popular today than it was when I was 20 or when my dad in the 60s was smoking. I think it comes down to the money. There's so much money. There's 300 or 250 public companies. There are hundreds of millions of dollars in tax receipts that are being generated. It's estimated that California alone will take in $1 billion in sales tax. It's the money, and that's my belief personally. That there's no way this doesn't happen.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing about that. I have not seen any movement whatsoever to change the classification of the drug from people who could actually do it. And I'm not just talking about Sessions and Trump. I'm also talking about Obama and Clinton. Never, whether Democrat or Republican, I never really got much of a sense from anyone at the top or aiming for the top that they were really going to do anything about legalization in America.
Well, and I think if you look in states like Arizona and you look in states like Ohio, and actually, let's hold this for 1 second and take a break here.
Sure.
You're listening to the Green Rush podcast. I'm Louis Goldberg. I'm talking with Aaron Smith from CNN, and we'll be right back.
More Green Rush coming up after we roll through our sponsors.
Cannabis concentrates have been around for hundreds of centuries. In 19th century America, extracts mixed with other herbs were sold as a miracle cure. Now, Apex Supercritical has elevated the science of extraction into the 21st century. Apex Supercritical is the leader in CO2 extraction, which is the cleanest, safest, and purest way to extract plant oils. ROI in as little as 3 weeks. Our cost-effective systems are fully automated with an industry-leading 3-year warranty. And if we don't have your system in stock, we can build one in as little as 4 weeks, bringing CO2 extraction to the masses. Learn more at apexsupercritical.com. 4-week build excludes high production systems.
Oh, let the marijuana llama tell you something now about a game for your phone gonna make you say, wow! The game's about the gamer growing cannabis for cash. Grow the seed, sell the bud, put the savings in the stash. Little by little, your empire grows large. Put different celebrities inside your entourage. You can choose to play with Snoop or me or Cheech and Chong. Cypress Hill, Willie Nelson, Wiz Khalifa with a bong. The name of the game is Hemp Inc., that's the point. Download and play while you light yourself a joint. The business of cannabis should be no crime. Hemp Inc. is even hot-proofed by the man who run High Times. Oh yeah? Get it on Android and iOS today. Marijuana llama out. Got to tend to me own crops, you know. Money don't make itself. Hemp Inc.
Banking and Bud, understanding the business of cannabis. Welcome back to The Green Rush, only on CannabisRadio.com.
And you are back. Thanks for coming back and
Thank you,
listening. So I was about to say, if you look at the where the lobbying money came in the last elections in Ohio and in Arizona, it came from alcohol companies and it came from pharmaceutical companies, which are two of the biggest lobbies there are. The way that in Nevada that the adult use market was structured, you had to have an alcohol distributorship to participate.
Yes.
As soon as the alcohol companies understand that there is going to be money to be made for them, they're gonna withdraw their complaints. So I think you're right. I think it's just a matter of time.
Well, in Nevada is an interesting case because what happened there is that the alcohol industry really seemed to shut it down or try to shut it down. It was like they were almost feigning interest, but then they just sort of almost seemed to try to block it. And it was done in kind of a clumsy way, and it didn't really work for more than a few days or a couple of weeks. So I'm not really sure what the point was. So I don't know. Were they on board with it? I don't know. I think they could have. I think the alcohol industry could have worked it a lot better in Nevada, actually.
So we are at the point in the interview in our show called Puff Puff Pass. So this is the opportunity for you to tell us two things that you love about covering the space and the one thing that's driving you nuts. So
okay,
you got it. The floor is yours. Puff away.
Well, what I love about it, write what you know. And, I guess I know enough about marijuana and guns to write about them both.
But they don't really mix well together. Your aim will be off, I would assume.
This is America. There's plenty of both. There's a lot of crossover, I think, with a lot of people, even though there's probably not supposed to be. I love covering marijuana because I'm interested in it. And I've been around for a few years. I've been around marijuana, a few times, and I feel like I understand the material much better than someone who just doesn't really care or doesn't really know anything about it, Yeah. And also, we're at a point in our history that I never really could have imagined. Even when I was in college, I don't think I ever would have imagined that you would have stores that you would walk into and just buy it over the counter. And here we are. It's happening. It's a reality in much of this country already, and it's changing all the time. And that's what's really interesting about this. it's always changing. It's never static. You know, what's going to happen next year? What's going to happen the year after that? You know, some of it is predictable, like with the states that are already moving ahead, like California. And we know Vermont will probably legalize it next year. But what's the other?
New Jersey, as soon as Phil Murphy gets elected.
Yeah, we'll see. New Jersey is another one. It's like New York. I mean, you know, people talk about it like it's inevitable. I mean, we'll have to see.
We're going to see an exodus of everybody from Brooklyn to Jersey City as soon as Phil Murphy is elected.
They'll certainly be doing round trips on the PATH train.
For sure. So what's the one thing that's driving you nuts about your coverage of the space?
What is driving me nuts about it, and I made a reference to this earlier, is the federal government's refusal to do anything about it. And I'm not even saying this as a pro-legalization or anti-legalization opinion type thing. I'm just saying that whether it's the president or any like cabinet member, top level people in the government, none of them do anything about it. And yet you have seen from state to state all of this activity of legalization, and every now and then you'll see locally some opposition to it in some of these states. But with the government, it's like they just don't do anything other than Sessions making an occasional comment, you know, the Obama administration issuing a memo which supposedly loosened things up a little bit, but maybe not really. I just think that, and I know people feel this way about the federal government with a lot of things, not just marijuana, but I think we really, I don't know what's going on with that. It's just this complete lack of involvement, like they're just sort of letting it happen or something like that. And I think that kind of drives me crazy to see that. I think that, you know, just the lack of leadership there it seems like a missed opportunity. It just seems unrealistic to take that approach of not doing anything, you know?
Yep. You know, the mainstream media finally is getting it, and there's no more mainstream media outlet than CNN. Oh, fuck. You know what? I want to ask you one more question, and then
sure.
If you can. So the issue of fake news has been rampant over the last 18 months. Yes, and so you've been, not personally, but as a network, been accused of. Do you encounter any pushback as being a CNN reporter from the cannabis industry in regards to fake news, or they don't care, they just want the coverage?
No, I've never had anyone from the cannabis industry bring it up. You know, Skrelly brought it up when I interviewed him, but generally speaking, no, I haven't really heard much of it or any of it really from the cannabis industry for whatever reasons. I'm not sure why, but you know,
cool.
When people say fake news, I generally don't worry about it. I feel pretty secure about what I do and what my network does, actually. So, you know, I don't really care. You know.
All right, cool. All right, thank you so much. Well, that's it for us today. Thanks to our guest, Aaron Smith from CNN. Absolutely fascinating. He can be found on CNN.com. And a special thanks to Nick Opich for helping us produce this podcast. And if you want to chat with us, you can find us on Instagram or Twitter at the handle GreenRushComms, as well as on our website, www.kcsa-cannabis.com. And please remember to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you want, you can email us at greenrush@kcsa.com.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast or redistribution without proper consent of CannabisRadio.com is prohibited.